Hello everyone. Welcome to our second season of AI and the Media World, a podcast by Future Media Hubs that explores how artificial intelligence is reshaping the world of media. I am Marijn Goossens, your host, and in each episode we speak with innovators, strategists, and media professionals to understand how AI is transforming the way stories are created, distributed, and experienced, and what that means for the future of media. Joining me today is Justin Mol from DPG Media. As Head of Innovation, Justin works on AI-driven newsroom and product experiments, focused on what he describes as superhuman journalism, using AI to strengthen journalism, making it more accessible and help stories travel more dynamically across formats and platforms. Hey, Justin, welcome. Great to have you here.
Happy to join.
Yeah, how are you?
I am great. I came here by bike, so I had a pretty comfortable ride. I was just talking about the fact that my daughter slept really poorly this night, but I'm very happy to join, and I'm very curious to talk about everything that has to do with AI and journalism.
So you're not too tired yet?
No, not yet. I'll probably have like a mental breakdown at around 2 or 3, so somewhere around that time I'll be down, but for now it's okay.
Okay, because I think you're also going to the IMEC Tech Forum, right, later today? Is that correct?
Yes, I am. We're also, I'm giving a keynote on AI and journalism and how we're using it. And I'm also joining one of the panels where we'll talk about some of the challenges that we are encountering in the usage of AI. So I'm happy to join. First time there, so it was a bit strange to me to see like IMEC and the association with media. That was a stretch, but now I understand. So I'm very happy to join.
Okay, super. Do you do this like often, like podcasts, lectures, panels?
Podcast, not too much. This is the second time that I'm doing this, so I'm a novice. So excuse me for anything that might happen.
No worries.
I do quite a lot of lectures. So at the VUB, we consult on classes with communication sciences on how they're teaching about the future of journalism, how journalism is evolving in the second bachelor's degree, and also for Artevelde Hogeschool, we do some consulting work. So I'm used to it, but not that much in this setting, let's say.
Yeah, but it's always exploring new horizons.
It is.
Okay, but I'm super excited to have you here. Let's dive immediately in. So you work at DPG. Maybe before we go into the topic of the session, what specifically do you do within DPG?
Sure. So I'm perhaps I can situate DPG a bit. So especially after the takeover of RTL last year, we decided to break up the company in like 3 major parts. So we have the publishing part where all of our news media are grouped and our magazines. We have the entertainment section and then online services, which are brands such as Independer or just vergelijkingswebsites in Dutch. And what we do, I work in the publishing area where I'm head of innovation. So which means that I, together with our directing team and with our editors-in-chief, try to look into the future, into how are people consuming the news, and what does that mean for both our consumer-facing products and our editorial-facing products. That's like the long and short of it. Okay.
So that's mostly your focus. So I can assume that AI is also a bit a part of your work.
It is, and it's creeping in more and more. I think it's almost like 80% of my job right now, or at least my job is 150% if my bosses are listening. But either way, it's about 80% of my work goes to how we are using and implementing AI. It's interesting to see that we also combine that, of course, with other work that we do. For instance, we work a lot with our newsrooms into how can they work as productively as possible while still maintaining their distinguishing ability in the field. So it was cool to see how we could implement AI there. And on the other hand, we have like 2 to 3 teams that are working on consumer-facing applications, which is interesting to see how we are changing the way in which we actually deliver text, audio, and video by means of AI. So it's cool for me to navigate between both worlds and to see how AI works there.
Okay, well, yeah, it's nice to work with AI as long as we're not replaced by AI.
Exactly.
Of course, but we'll dive into that a bit later. Okay, but so I understand what you do and how important AI has become for your job. Before we go a bit more towards cases and specific situations, very high level, how does DPG look at AI? What's the vision?
Sure. I think that if you were to ask me this question like 2 to 3 years ago, my answer would have been, I think we had like kind of a spaghetti approach. So we just threw stuff at the wall and we were like, let's just see what sticks. But at the point at which ChatGPT became a lot more prominent, like 2022, 2023, we noticed that a lot of our newsrooms started working with it more in depth. And we were not, I don't think that it was control that we were looking for, but more like making the proper decisions. So that led us to thinking a lot more strategically about AI. What does that mean for us as a company? And I think that that's like one of the core concepts that I'd love to talk to you a bit more about, is that we were like, if we look at the way in which people are consuming the news, we have to start there when it comes to how we should use AI. And I think that that's where we started. So we were just like, if we were to define the current information landscape, let's say, our assumption is that people are living in this kind of white noise surrounding. So there has never been more information than there is today, and we've never been more passive than we are today. And both of those combined makes for a very difficult environment, because people are grappling with getting to the right information. And we feel that our role within that entire information ecosystem should be that we should be a guide for them. We should help them navigate that space. And we're noticing that people are currently using like two mindsets when they're trying to navigate the entire information ecosystem. One is it viral? They follow the masses. So in my talk this afternoon, I'll use a slide. I'll show you in a bit, but it's a slide where you can see that all of the reading experience is following like a power graph, let's say. So there's never been a shorter amount of articles that are getting the most amount of views. So people are following the masses. That's like a mental model they use to say, okay, this is how I navigate this information space. But a second one, and perhaps even more important, is that they use people. People are a means to navigate the clutter. They are a means to navigate the mess. And that's where we got our superhuman journalism perspective from. We believe that people are still the center for connection, and that's part of our job. We want to connect people to the world, to their surroundings, to themselves, perhaps even, as they've gotten lost in social media and platforms and so forth. So that's our current take on AI, is that we use the technology to free up time so people can work on stuff that makes people important. And also we use AI to make sure that our journalism becomes as accessible as possible. That's like the medium strategic narrative that we're currently applying to it.
Okay. No, but that sounds very inspiring, because you said something I thought was very interesting, like superhuman journalism. You embrace AI and the possibilities that come with it. I mean, it's also unavoidable. It is there. But you also are convinced that the role of humans inside this process are very important. And if I understand it correctly, that humans can guide the audience towards correct content and context, maybe.
Definitely. And I think that journalism, in like the way in which we've been doing it for the past years, has not, by definition, promoted people as such, right? If you look at newspapers from like 5 years ago, we had these abbreviations that said, who wrote this? RVBDM. As opposed to like, exactly. As opposed to it was like person with name X and Y. And it's almost absurd that we've depersonalized something that has been never as important to personalize during our current day and age. Because, for instance, we look a lot at the New York Times as a good example. When they write live blogs, you can see actually the people typing. You can see people switching. You can see, I'm stepping into this live blog because I want to be the one to help you navigate this very complex conflict, let's say. If you're looking at Iran, people are struggling with the amount of information that they have to get to. So I am a very firm believer that people in the information ecosystem are perhaps even our last moat, if you look at our competitive position. But I do strongly believe that AI should help us, because superhuman, I mean, my talk would also have been about just human journalism, a full stop, which is not the case. We do believe that AI can help us in two aspects. We can do tasks that we've never been able to do before at scale. That has to do with just checking information, making sure that, for instance, for HLN, we have 285 municipalities that we serve. We don't have 285 reporters in the field. So we have like clusters of people that have to navigate information. We use AI and information to get them to the right position that they have to be in. That's something that we would have never been able to do if we had to rely on people only. But the second one, and I think that that's perhaps the most interesting one, is I think that AI can help us to really make journalism more accessible than it's been up until now. We have been struggling with catching up with other audiences, younger audiences. And I think that this technology could definitely help us there.
Okay, that immediately brings us towards one of my second of my next questions, because I read and with our talks before we've discussed the context bot,
Sure.
which is like also a bit this next step of providing more context or going more in depth, and is a way of using AI in a way that you can create products that have never been possible before, like
Sure.
a level of personalization and extra context. Could you go a bit deeper into that and explain what this exactly is?
Sure, very happy to do so. So we started with this idea, I think it was about a year ago or so. So our assumption was take the talk that we just had about the white noise, right? So we're all stuck in this enormous ecosystem of information, and I don't know what to look at first. There's this one guy, David Caswell. He wrote a great article on AI enlightenment. He's a very optimistic person when it comes to AI in journalism. I think that we're more in the middle of the optimism pessimist position, but he's full on, and he's like, I think that the main thing that people struggle with is not just the sheer volume of information, but the fact that both of our information contexts are very individual. The stuff that you know and that you read is very different from the stuff that I know and I read. And journalism has been stuck in this one-to-many model for quite a lot of years. Ever since it's been originated, we've been stuck in this. We write an article, for instance, at HLN, which has to serve 2.3 million Flemings, and not all of them are the same. So we were thinking about, okay, how can we provide more context to an article, context that either you or me could be missing, and that can have to do, for instance, we notice this a lot with like long-running stories. So that can be Iran, it can also be the ship with the Hanta virus. So we have something that's updating and updating and updating, and we give articles at any point in time, but we miss context. So we name this is the protagonist, but who was he again? What's his backstory? We name events, but we didn't really explain them. So what the context bot actually does is it tries to explain context that the journalist, perhaps even consciously, has tried to avoid, but we want to insert back into journalism in a more flexible way, let's say.
Okay, and to make this very clear for the audience, how exactly does this look like? So I indeed want to read something more about hantavirus. I open an article about it. What's new? What's new with ContextBot?
So what the ContextBot does is we created on the basis of an LLM, we created a prompt that tries to just read through the article. Okay. It identifies these sources of missing context. And then we create a list of questions that people could have on the back of the missing context. And then we use a RAG method to look into the archives of a specific title. Retrieval augmented system. So which means that we only look at the actual archive that we have in control. So the LLM in this case will not search the web for information, and that's a conscious decision because I've talked about superhuman journalism. We find it important that our journalistic material is validated. We know that that's true. And within a journalistic environment, we use that to provide answers to the questions that the LLM has identified throughout an article. And then the editor can decide whether he wants to position that component or not. And that's also an important one perhaps to mention. We are firm believers of a human in the loop as a principle, which means that we never use AI in an automated sense. So also not for the context bot. So not every article for the people who are looking at it right now, which will be in the thousands, I guess. Not all of our articles have this. So we have an editor try to think about, okay, does this actually add value to the article? And he has to check each and every one of the questions and answers that the bot has given.
Not just a technological sauce that has been put over every article.
Exactly, yeah.
But you're looking really, where is the added value here? Is it needed? And then apply it.
Yeah.
And also interesting that you mentioned there with RAG systems, like you're using sources that you trust and you know, because we also had it already before in one of the other episodes. We're in a trust issue a little bit within our society. Are you not afraid within those AI systems that they can have an impact, maybe negative impact on trust, or?
Definitely. I think that trust is it's the cork on which we're floating, especially as news media. And it's kind of like a balancing act between how can we make the journalism as accessible as we can make it without losing trust. And that's also why we try to be as transparent as possible in certain cases. So in this case, for instance, we are very transparent about the usage. So it's not just saying, well, this is your new context bot, start using it. We try to introduce it by means of articulating this is an assistant that we've built with AI that's monitored by an editor and that only uses our own journalistic archives. And we checked this with feedback with our users, and feedback was actually very positive. We've seen uplifts in reading time from 3 to 4%, which is significant if you look at the total reading time of our news brands. So trust is indeed an issue, but I think that if we use transparency correctly, and that's a tough topic, then we can manage it in a way that it both benefits the reader and us as a company.
Yeah, I think that labeling, I think it's also somehow an obligation looking at the EU AI Act, but I think it's important, right, to make clear when you're using AI, and I think that's important for people, and then once it adds value and they know it's AI, they might be okay with it. Yep. Do you notice also from the user, but also from internally, that these AI tools are getting really accepted, that people are open for it?
Yes and no. I guess that. So I work for 15 news brands in both the Flemish part and the Dutch part of the country, and all of our news brands are very different, which makes my job the most interesting job in the media, if you'd ask me, because we have certain newsrooms that are very progressive, perhaps even a tad too progressive. And we have newsrooms that are pretty conservative, and we have to balance between them. That also makes our job as interesting as it is, because all of them provide feedback as to why are they more skeptical towards the usage. And that was also part of the ACM. The ACM is like the regulating authority in the Netherlands. While we were acquiring RTL, they said any decision that has to do with either AI or personalization, it's an editorial decision. So everything that I do is advice, and together with the editor-in-chief, we try to navigate what does this mean for your brand. Some of our brands are pretty extreme in their applications, some of them are more conservative. And my job is to make them aware of both the risk and the opportunity that it grants them. And we make very smart technological choices. Smart, look at me now. But we make technological choices in this range. So we created 3 platforms, let's say. We have Chat DPG, which is our own in-house, homegrown solution where each of our editors, any editor, can create prompts that serve them specifically. But as you probably will know, we have thousands of reporters in the field. Not all of them are too tech savvy, or not all of them are willing to navigate to this specific platform and then go to the prompt. So we also introduced Gemini and Notebook LM, which is at times more accessible. But we also, and I think that that's why being at the intersection between editorial development and the consumer is interesting. We have our own editorial CMS systems. So that's the content management system where all of our reporters working, where they start writing, where they publish their stories. When we feel that AI is mature enough, we integrate it there, which makes sure that people discover it and they start using it. And for now, for instance, we have days at which more than 300 of our reporters use AI to help them or assist them throughout their journalistic work.
Okay, so you feel that it's integrating more and more, and you're looking at a very phased approach, and when to go into a certain level of AI integration, also based a bit on how technological progressive that department is. Okay. Yeah, because I can imagine it must not be easy for like a big company as DPG to integrate this super innovative technology at such a deep level. If we go a little bit back towards our use case, the context bot, where you at this amazing level of personalization, some would refer to this as the concept of liquid media, right? Like, what is liquid media for you, for DPG, and is this part of your strategy to become more liquid?
Yeah, so perhaps let's first unpack the concept, right? So liquid media also aligns with this idea of how can we move back from the one-to-many model to make the journalism more accessible, but not just in making more attributes to the actual journalism, but just transforming it into a form or a mode that actually fits the context of the reader, listener, or viewer. And by saying that, I also hinted towards how we are transforming content there. We started doing this almost a year ago already with the introduction of text-to-speech, for instance, where we were like, okay, we're noticing that there are a lot more moments at which people want to interact with the news, but we're just not there. And not being there a lot of times has to do with the mode in which we're presenting it. It was text only. And let me be very clear, and I'll say this wherever this is the hill I will die on, if I have to. Yes, I am convinced that text in any journalistic environment will always have its value. Although it's the oldest form that we have on offer, it's also very often a very efficient form of consuming information. But we're noticing that other forms also benefit us. So audio was a big one that we started working on last year, because people on the go are not using our textual formats, or at least I'm hoping they're not using our textual formats. So we were like, okay, how can we transform journalism at scale? Because yes, we were creating podcasts in the same setting as we were, but for instance, HLN as a news brand publishes more than 250, 300 articles on a daily basis. Creating 250 or 300 podcasts would be a very costly business, as you might know. So we started transforming this automatically. We have a current partnership with Microsoft where we created text-to-speech and created a custom voice. There again, we have firm guidelines on how we create these voices and how we attribute ownership and IP. So we worked with an actor, a Flemish actor. We have a contract with him that is very different from how other people are creating these custom voices. But that was our first step. And we just transform on a daily basis currently all of our journalistic work. So across all of our news brands, we offer both text and audio. So that was a very good first step. But liquidity also means just trying to perhaps detach from the form itself and trying to look for other opportunities there, which might be either summarizing at the head of an article, using context introduction in line of an article, or perhaps even going further into the formats themselves.
Okay, so liquid media would be like it's not a fixed form where the story is presented in, but you have the story, and then you can go into different forms and shapes, can be long or short, use a lot of complex words or not, can be audio or video. That's a bit the idea, right?
Yeah, I would slightly correct you, especially in the context of DPG Media, that the integrity of the narrative or of the story should be something that we try to guard, because I know that there are extreme views on liquidity, right? That we're like just we're
super universe.
Yeah, exactly. That and perhaps that's the future of news media. I don't know whether we're no longer owning the interface between the user, but that we're just building the pipes of information, which makes it's a complete transition of the model. But I think that for now, it's important to have still a story that is to some extent integral to how we wanted to tell the story. So I don't know whether we would ever go in for a version where you have a fully customized narrative, because I think that that's where risks in terms of both hallucination, but also us getting a different side of the story becomes a bit dangerous. So that's like the threshold that we're currently just not crossing yet.
Yeah. So you're limiting a bit like the level of personalization or customization that your liquid systems would allow.
Yeah.
So what's the level that's for you still okay and doable? Like what kind of liquid like configuration would you allow?
Perhaps let me first say like why we are a bit more skeptical towards radical personalization, let's say. If I say that trying to navigate a very complex information space is part of our strategy, then going in for full personalization, which would mean that your news offering and the way in which it's presented is very different from mine, that would also deconnect us, the two of us, because perhaps you would get a different offering than mine. And having something that we share connects us, and that's part of what we need to do as our position in society. So that's why we are perhaps a bit more skeptical, or at least right now. What are the types of transformation that we really do? Well, audio was the first one, but now we're looking also into video, which is interesting. Video was a bit of a hassle for our company, I guess. Which is it surprising?
No, it's not an easy thing to do to create good video, of course.
Yeah. I mean, video in a sense that, I mean, we have VTM News, of course, which is a great product that we create. It's a linear, a long-form format. It's been around for ages, and it's something that still reaches 1 million people on a daily basis.
Congratulations.
So
that's strong nowadays.
Congratulations to the editorial space, not to me. So we have people that can think in terms of video, but what we were looking for in this fast-paced news environment is how can we transform at scale again? Because as I mentioned, some of our news brands publish such a volume, and a lot of our audiences are looking for vertical narration, and that's perhaps the distinction between just video as such and telling stories in a vertical way. And that's something that we're exploring right now in terms of the liquid content.
Okay, so you're looking in how you can create more of that vertical content that's indeed dominating now the video usage worldwide.
Yeah.
Do you mean this in an automated way?
No, not too much. Or
so much.
A bit. All of my answers are nuanced, right? You can use this as a headline. I'm nuanced. As you perhaps, if you want to use your HLN app or the AD in the Netherlands, we currently already have a vertical video section that we're testing with. Trying to transform text to vertical video, it's a hassle because what we don't want to do and what we will never do is generate video from scratch. Generating images that are not real or not a representation of reality, that's a hard line for us. We will not cross this.
You always use real images, real content.
Yes, and real people. So I know that we are pretty different there from other players in the current Flemish field. I know that, for instance, Roulata does other things there. Perhaps also they have brands that serve them better in that sense, that they use more illustrative use of video and images. We won't. But what we are noticing is that if you write a long article, then transforming that into like 3 to 4 segments, bite-sized snippets that you can easily run through in a vertical form, that in a first sense is an initial formatting that we do. So what we did, we had a cool conversation with our colleagues in Schibsted. So Schibsted is a Scandinavian news brand, and they open source technology, which they called Videofy.
So it's free to use?
It's free to use. It's free to use. And also, as we are getting more accustomed with vibe coding, I even got to unpack it myself.
Are you vibe coding, Justin?
Well, I shouldn't say this on camera, I guess, but yes, we are testing with it. And
it's fun to do. It just opens up so much possibilities.
Yeah, it does. And so I saw one of the directors there at INMA, it's the International News Media Association. We were talking and he was like, we open source this, test it. So I opened GitHub, had a look at it. What it actually does is it transforms text and then creates the segments. It renders a video, and then the editors have to just upload media assets to it. So you have the 4 segments there, and then you just drag and drop, let's say, either a static image or a video file, and then they can crop the video or just make it shorter. And then we can create these narratives at scale. And the cool thing is that it does not harm our human-in-the-loop principle. It transforms, but it's still the editor that has to look into the narration, look into the copy that was created, and add the media files that we actually need.
Okay, so to understand it very correctly, what Videofy does, or at least for you, for DPGs, it will, based on the article, prepare how the short-form content will look like, put it in segments, but it doesn't add images or GenAI content itself. Your humans, the editors, they will add the content,
right? Yeah, exactly. And I think that we are pretty much aware that this will not be the only way in which we will produce video, but it's a way in which people that are not skilled at montage, for instance, which is, it's a specific skill, working with specific programs, getting to grips with them, training people, that expanding the people that can actually use video to tell the story was for us like a big breakthrough. And we're currently in a testing and a piloting phase, so we're not using it across all of our brands just yet. But I'm very, very excited about the evolution because it just opens doors towards other audiences that are just using this form a lot more to get to our journalism. And it can be like they come for the vertical video and they stay for the article, or they come for the video, they stay for the podcast, or even for the puzzle. It's a way in which we can just enlarge the reach and the bridges that we can create towards our audience.
Yeah, that's very amazing. I think indeed, like that, for example, video podcast, the video effect really helps for the discoverability, but then in the end they might go just for the audio version. It's amazing to hear, in both cases for Videofy in the context, but that you're not looking in a full automation way of AI, but there's always this clear human in checking when to use the technology, adapting it, staying in control. It's more like amplification of your human workforce?
Yeah,
or?
I think perhaps I'd use the word augmentation or so. So we try to augment what's already there. We look into like we are convinced of the fact that we have quite some valuable journalistic material. I talked to my director yesterday, and he was like, "We are sitting on digital gold. However, we're just having a hard time unlocking the gold for our users." And I think that's part of the challenge. But it's always that point of view. I think that using AI purely as something to replace something else with, it's not the route that we should take, because from a strategic point of view, it's not reinforcing anything. And I think that one of the dangers there, as I talked about the white noise concept that we use, if the only thing we would do is fill up the space more, then we become part of the problem. We are not creating a signal in the noise, and that should be our focus. That should be the way in which we drive every technological decision we make, whether that's AI or personalization or more flexible home pages or whatever. So I'm pretty convinced that should be, or at least for DPG Media, the route that we are following.
Okay, so very clear strategic vision. I understand now that when you said in the beginning, if you would ask this question 3 years ago, maybe we would have a different conversation, more like, help, what's going on?
Yeah, perhaps I wouldn't have been here.
No, I'm very happy you are here. Yeah. Maybe to go round up a little bit our conversation, if we're looking ahead, and especially towards this liquid media concept, I think it's very intriguing, and personalization. What do you see a bit as the future of this for DPG, but also maybe a bit out of DPG in the world?
Sure.
Are we going to our super personalized world in 5 years' time, or not?
Yeah, fair question. Let me start by saying that let's pull apart using AI in our production processes, which we've talked about at length right now, and using AI from a distribution point of view, like what's our relationship towards LLMs and should we be present there and so forth. I think that from a production side, we are on track, or at least we're on track towards developing where we need to be. I think that the future should be thinking about what the distribution part means to us as a media company, and that's a pickle. It's a pickle for two reasons. One is currently audiences are not really, especially Flemish audiences, are not really moving into LLMs as a means towards getting their news. In the previous Reuters report, and I think that they will publish again next month or so, 2% of people ask news-related questions to AI or LLM interfaces. 2%. Okay. So which is, I mean, from a distribution point of view, I'm very worried about evolutions at Google, evolutions at Meta, but I'm not that worried about evolutions at LLMs right now, because those interfaces are not just that, at least Flemish people are not using it for that reason. However, in the last Digimeter, it became obvious that people are moving back into search engines, which is, we were very surprised. The amount of people that were using search engines to ask news-related questions was interesting to us, because it probably hints towards why AI overviews are in fact relevant to people and why we should play a part there. So I do believe that as people move more towards personalized AI interfaces where they interact about the news, we should think about this as a company. There is one very, very big roadblock there. We talked about this with the people from People Inc. It's like a very big publisher in the States. We saw them last week. And that chief innovation officer had a very clear view on what needs to change. So for now, we are blocking each and every LLM that we find, or at least that's trying to approach. We block them. We block them, and we're trying to, because they find ways each and every day to just try to use other ways to get to our content. But we're blocking them.
Sounds a bit wrong usage.
It is. It's very wrong. I mean, it's the biggest theft of copyright in the history of the world, I guess. So I mean, yes, this is very wrong. However, we do feel that we have a role to play in the ecosystem, because it's a way in which people could start interacting with the news. What's missing there is a market for information, because we're noticing that the amount of bot traffic towards our news media is increasing tremendously. I can't give you figures perhaps in a couple of months, but it's tremendous. That audience is not being monetized. We don't have a monetization mechanism yet, but we know that those LLMs, that's what the chief innovation officer from People Inc. was very good at articulating. He was like, LLMs need three things. They need power, they need chips and they need information, up-to-date information. So we're not just being extracted as milking cows for them to train their models. They need real-time information. So we need a mechanism towards actual monetization of real information. And we don't have it yet. We don't have a financial trade-off. We don't know whether if a bot comes to our news sites 1,000 times, 3,000, 4,000, 100,000 times a day, what does that mean in terms of euros? What's the value transition there? As long as, from a European perspective, we haven't built the market for information exchange between technology and news media, we're not moving forward. So I think that should be the future, that we think about a market space for information, validated information, so other sources can also use our journalistic material, but they have to pay fair value.
Of course, because you said it was like power, chips, and information. They pay for power, they pay for chips.
Definitely.
But they don't pay for information.
Exactly.
So that's something that we should look at it.
Yeah.
But especially, as you said, it should be European, right?
Yeah,
On
exactly.
Belgian level.
No,
alone,
it doesn't make sense. It doesn't. I mean, we are. We shouldn't try to solve this on our own. It's too big of an issue, and also trying to create a market space requires us to think about how should we create metadata around journalism so it travels better, so we don't have semantic loss. Okay. We should think about what's the mechanism towards payment, and you want to distribute this evenly. I mean, I think that the good thing about our media markets is that they're strong. They're locally strong. We have trust in our media is quite high, especially in more legacy-related media as ours. So how can we bolster those effects in that new market means try to build the market as a European platform and try to look into that from a European perspective, perhaps even from a global perspective, but let's start with Europe.
Let's start with Europe.
That'll be hard enough, right? But I think that should be the future, because now we're tied by hands and feet because it's just a criminal way of getting to content. If we open up the market, then we can start thinking about reaching new audiences in those ways. So I think I am mildly optimistic because I'm fully aware of the scale at which this operation should run. But I think that there's an opening and we should use it.
Okay. Oh, that's like a very inspiring way of looking at the future. I was thinking more what's going the future of like liquid media going to look like from a consumer perspective. But you're right. First, because we should look at how are we going to do this? How do we keep our business and our monetization models in order? How do we keep our media ecosystem strong?
Exactly.
And that's maybe the first step to
achieve it should be, right?
in this vision. Okay, to finalize a bit our chat, and thank you already so much for all this interesting information,
You're very
Justin.
welcome.
A lot of young journalists and media students and professionals are very excited about these evolutions, but they're also a bit afraid. Sure. If they would be listening to this podcast, what kind of advice would you give to a young media professional?
What would I give them? I'm a big fan of Roy Amara, who's the guy who he created like Amara's Law. It doesn't really matter, but he's like, when it comes to technology from a psychological point of view, hold your horses. It's important to brace yourself. It's important to look at the future, but hold your horses. I'd say don't panic too much, and do three things. And that's also the three things that we do as a company. Look into people, look into practice, and look into guidelines. So I think that as you are approaching the media industry, be curious. Be curious about this technology, because I think the combination of a person that's curious and a person that actually uses the technology is very valuable. I think that that's the biggest stretch that we're currently having as media companies. We have decision makers that are not actually using the technology enough to make actual decisions. So young people coming in, use it. Use it and learn from it. Learn from where the risks are. The technology is moving way too fast for us to create the documents that inform them, because the moment at which I stop writing, that's when the new technology is released. So it doesn't have any point. So people moving in, use it. Explore it. Explore the boundaries. Explore the limitations. But have an open mind. I am firmly convinced that there is a future for the media industry, and I think that from a Flemish position, young people can join the industry that is moving forward. So I'd be happy to welcome them.
Okay, amazing. That goes to my last question there. Where can people follow you?
They can follow me on LinkedIn predominantly.
Okay.
So I publish there on, I think, about a weekly basis or so about how the industry is moving, how we as a company are trying to give a response to how the industry moves. Also, I publish vacancies there. So if anyone is interested in joining my
the
team,
one you should write down, guys.
yeah, exactly. So I currently have a vacancy in my team. So I'm looking for people that are enthusiastic about media, how it's evolving, and I'm happy for them to join the team either in Antwerp or in Amsterdam.
Okay. Thank you so much for this super interesting conversation.
You're very welcome. Happy to join.
Thank you. So this was the third episode of our second season of AI in the media world. If you enjoyed this conversation, consider sharing it with your colleagues, friends, or anyone who is interested in AI, journalism, and media innovation. You can always find more insights, cases, and updates on the Future Media Hub's website or follow Future Media Hubs on LinkedIn. In the next episode, we're going to look towards the future of media in 2035. How is the media user of 2035 going to consume media, and how should we, as media professionals, prepare for it? I am Marijn Goossens. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Thank you. Okay. Super.
Done.
Merci.